everyone, this is Whitney with my week 3 video discussion, answering the question, based on the readings and assigned videos, reflect on some ways the Civil War era continues to affect our lives today, culturally as well as politically. Include your thoughts on what our country might be like without the events of the Civil War and Reconstruction, or if the outcome had been different. One big thing about how the Civil War really affected us and still does is it forced the country to really answer some questions about the Constitution that before the war they had never really had to actually answer what it meant. Before the wars, slavery was still protected, and the states had all the power to decide who had what rights. The war and Reconstruction changed that, with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, ending slavery and kind of expanding voting rights and talking more about citizenship and what citizenship was and should look like. Even though, I mean, there was obviously still challenges around voting and rights and all of that, the amendments really were the foundation that helped for civil rights across the board, and that's still something very important today. Culturally, the war also changed, I think, how America views death and sacrifice, especially for your country. That was a big thing. And the lecture about the Civil War bullet really stood out to me because it showed how massive the lives lost were. Like, I don't even remember what the number he said was about how many bullets were fired, but I remember thinking that it was absolutely insane, and I should have written it down because it did, like, the details didn't stick with me, but the fact stuck with me. And then Reconstruction is also a really huge part in why political division still exists. During the Reconstruction, the federal government stepped in to protect formerly enslaved people and help rebuild the South, but the federal troops were also removed, and a lot of that disappeared. A lot of the protection went away, and that led to segregation and the voters still not having the rights that they should be receiving. And I think that helps explain a lot of racial inequality that, whether people want to believe it or not, still very much exists. And also all the tension between, South and North, and, those issues are still being dealt with today. And if the Civil War never happened, or if the Confederacy had won, I think the country would be completely different. Slavery would probably probably not still be a thing, but it would have lasted much longer. I'm sure that it would have, if the Civil War didn't happen how it happened, there would have been more wars. There would have been more debate. There would have been more just fighting out this issue, because it was obviously something very worth fighting about. But I think slavery would have lasted a lot longer, and I think the idea of equality, not only for people of color, for the, formerly enslaved people, but also for all the other, not necessarily minorities, but all the other groups of people who had been suppressed and their rights have been taken away, or have just more recently been granted the power to vote. It's crazy to think about how recently really women have been given that power, and how that could have been set back if civil rights hadn't, if the Civil War hadn't happened, because everything would have been delayed. It would have been pushed back. And overall, I just think Civil War and Reconstruction weren't just about the past. They shaped freedom, citizenship, equality across the board for the United States. And today, political and cultural debates, really, most of them can be traced back to this, and the Civil War coming out how it did. And yeah. All right, I think that's all. Thank you, guys.